Welcome to the Nautic Nomad podcast. I'm your host, Randy Berry. Throw off the bow lines, sit back and relax as we discover adventure, explore the world on water, and share about everything yachting. What's up, nomads? This is Randy Berry coming at you from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Today I'm speaking with Chelsea, aka the Yogi Yachtie. If you are on Instagram, give her a follow. Also, if you're on Instagram, give us a follow at Nautic Nomad. We post there every single day, inspirational quotes, travel stuff, everything having to do with the yachting industry. And we also announce our podcast releases on there. A lot of the guests that we have on the show also have Instagram, so it's a great way to get connected with our group in our community. So Chelsea is an incredible abundance coach, also a yacht crew member who teaches yoga. She's going to talk to me today about the 3 things that will hold you back from getting started in the yachting industry if you're interested in getting a career in yachting. Also, her inspiration for being in the industry and a little bit about herself and the incredible coaching that she provides.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me here. I'm honored, of course. As you mentioned, I am a yoga teacher and an abundance coach, and I am also a freelance super yacht stewardess.
Awesome.
Right now, I'm doing freelance. I've kind of transitioned from doing permanent, longer-term contracts, and I'm sure we can kind of talk all about what that means in a little bit. But
Yes.
As of right now, I'm in between seasons, and I'm happy to be here.
That's awesome. And I love that you've been also so you teach yoga on board yachts when you're a stewardess as well, which I was reading your blog and I absolutely love it. It's really great for people to have that, when they, like you say, they're in confined spaces and just be able to be on board and have that connection. So I think that's incredible. And it's a great skill to have too, coming into yachting.
Yeah, thanks. I do know that, when you are getting into yachting, having a separate skill to kind of set yourself apart is really helpful. When I first got into yachting, which was about 3 years ago, it was the catalyst to what helped me landing my first permanent job. They were looking for a green, which means a brand new stewardess, who also was a yoga teacher. So that was really helpful. Mm-hmm.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about being an abundance coach and what that means and what you do for people now?
Yeah, it's funny. So right now I'm in between seasons. So what that means is I'm not on a boat right now. And kind of the beauty about yachting is that you can incorporate it into your life in many different ways. Mm-hmm. And for me, being a permanent stewardess was so amazing for the time that I did it. And I have sort of other, of course, passions in my life. So as far as abundance and health and wellness coaching, it stemmed as sort of the natural progression in my career of yoga teaching. And I am an empath and a highly sensitive person, which I've done a lot of my own work around creating healthy boundaries around that, which is really interesting how that sort of ties into life on board a yacht. And at this point, I work with clients one-on-one in helping them work through different situations in their lives to kind of help them get back to a downstream flow. What I like to say is, if you're feeling like you're constantly fighting an upstream battle, what might you need to let go of in order to surrender to the downstream and kind of ride the waves and flow with the highs and low tides, right? We can keep this super theoretically nautical, but really with the theme of water, there's something to it.
Right. Yeah. Not fighting waking up fighting every day, but rather just going with what you have in front of you and what's in your life. I love that.
Absolutely. And a lot of that is just simply surrendering, letting go of expectations, letting go of beliefs that you might have picked up along the way, or really reassessing what is working for you in your life right now and what isn't working. And then taking logical steps to move more towards a downstream flow and having someone there to hold your hand along the way and be your accountability partner along the way to get to where it is that you want to be in life. And of course, it's different for every person that I work with.
Yeah. I can imagine too that because I feel like people see themselves obviously in a different light than other people see them, and having someone like yourself who can, like not only pick up on their energy, like what they're going through, but just have a different point of view. Like, I see this is
Absolutely.
happening in your life. Like, you might not realize that, but you can see it so clearly, and just having that outside
Absolutely.
perspective.
The way I put it is, when we are in the trenches of our emotions, it's impossible to dig ourselves out of the mud, right?
Wow.
It's
I love that.
impossible. Yeah. And it is so helpful to have somebody get down in the trenches with you. That is more powerful, I think, sometimes than having someone just sort of fly in and say, hey, let me just whip you out of this right now. You really need to make sure that you're honoring your emotions. You need to allow yourself the space to give yourself permission to feel all the feels.
Right.
As kind of corny as that may sound, the only way through something is straight through it. And it's really helpful to have somebody there with you to, like you said, give you another perspective, to see clearly where you might not be able to see so clearly because you're in it, you're feeling it. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I'm angry or I'm grieving, totally emotionally drained, I can't logically think. Our bodies go into fight or flight mode.
Right.
Literally, our brains shut down and our blood goes to all of those adrenal functions in our body that are going to protect us and fight if we need to. And it's really helpful to have somebody come in and say, okay, you are safe, you are loved, you belong here, your emotions are valid. Like, let's maybe find out what the kindest thing is to do for what you need right now and navigate that together.
That's amazing. That's so interesting. Just, it's a little bit of a deviation, but how you say about the fight or flight. So with me being in a car accident about a month ago, and just my body was so in fight or flight mode that I actually I had chipped a tooth and I didn't even tell for about 3 weeks, because my body was so tense and so on edge, and just, full of emotion, and just things that you don't even realize are there until you can relax and calm down. And
absolutely. And thank God our bodies do that. Like, thank goodness our bodies protect us. But if you think back to first humans and what the fight or flight response was for, I mean, literally running from tigers and chasing down and hunting food, our bodies still react in that same way to traffic jams and meetings and in-laws, right? Where we might not be in immediate danger, but we are still, our sympathetic nervous system is going haywire, and our blood pressure rises and our eyes dilate and our breath is shortened and our digestion shuts down. And, our psoas muscles deep down in our core is constantly flexing because our bodies want to run. We want to run really, really far, and we want to hide, whatever it may be.
Right.
So it's really lovely to navigate, when you are in that fight or flight response. This is kind of a great way to sort of leeway into how you can relate this into your world on board a yacht. When we are in that fight or flight response and we are really stressed out and we haven't been sleeping enough and we are surrounded by constant stimulation, whether that be requests or guests or coworkers or whatever is required of you that day, what means or what modules or what tools are going to help you come back to that parasympathetic rest and digest state, right? So the more we can keep our nervous system, our central nervous system down, and when we can rewire our baseline for health. I think in Western culture, we are so used to productivity and action, right? We value our own sense of worth based on what we are producing or what we are doing that day. And if we're not doing enough, we're shoulding all over ourselves. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. We constantly, our baseline for health is somewhere up in this nervous, anxious feeling. And when we can rewire that baseline for health and we remember, okay, rest and digest is my baseline for health. And then any other reaction I feel in my life, I can manage it with mindfulness as opposed to just reacting.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. This is definitely easier spoken about than implemented. Someone is screaming in your face, I need this right now. It takes a lot of practice to just not react. That's where the yoga off the mat comes into play. And that's where these breathing exercises and different kinds of meditations or different types of movement can really help us get into this rest and digest. And sometimes stopping what you're doing and taking 3 deep breaths can really help. And other times that's might not be helpful. I mean, I don't know. The breath is always helpful. Maybe meditating silently, I should say. Maybe it's more helpful to hop on a treadmill and go run your tush off and sweat it all out, right? So it's really important to meet yourself where you're at and meet yourself with compassion and kindness and take the next step from there.
I think it's great too that, like you've been in both worlds, like yoga and yachting, and finding this way to like mold them together. So yoga is kind of how you found out about yachting, right?
Yeah, they were actually 2 very different things. I took my first yoga class in 2004 when I was a freshman in college. And of course, I was an athlete, and I'm a Capricorn, I'm a Pitta, if you're familiar with Ayurveda, and I'm a total type A personality, which means I am the definition of go, 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 go.
Right.
Like, do not stop. Fill that calendar up, because if it's not full, then you're doing something wrong, right? That is like, so that's been the practice of undoing all of that for the last 14 years of my life. My yoga practice now, of course, it looks like shapes on a yoga mat, but it's so much more than that. It's sort of the unraveling and undoing of what I believed to be true, and actually bringing forth what is true, what is my true self, and what have I been hiding behind to mask all those things, because somewhere along the way I believed that wasn't good enough, that my true self wasn't good enough. And of course, we can go way back into childhood traumas and blah, 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 but we'll keep moving forward. So yoga started in 2004, fast way forward to 2015. And I was in the process of getting a divorce. And I got married in 2010 to a very sweet man who I still very much respect to this day. And 5 years later, we just decided that this wasn't working anymore. We had different goals and different dreams. And from my opinion, with a lot of love, we decided to go our separate ways. Now, of course, that sounds lovely. No, don't get me wrong. I was definitely in the trenches, as I say.
Right.
For a long time, navigating that grief, that death of a relationship. You're really grieving a loss there. So that took some time. And one of my good friends who was teaching at the yoga studio that I was teaching at full time, she had been in yachting in her 20s, and I came to her one day. I had known that she had done this like yachting thing, and I didn't really know what that meant at the time. So I reached out to her one day, and, of course, this was during a time of a lot of self-exploration and a lot of inquiry and a lot of what's next. So what's next in my journey of life? And I mean, it literally kind of came to me. I remember the exact moment. I was driving to the yoga studio to teach, and it came to me like a lightning bolt. And that, those moments of inspiration, whether you call it universe or spirit or synchronicity or God, when that voice speaks to you, you must listen.
Right.
And it came to me literally in my mind, I need to move on a boat out of nowhere. I texted my friend, and she said, okay, I'm going to tell you the 3 things that will either be make or break for you. Maybe even before we get to there, for me at this point in my life, I wanted to travel, I wanted to teach yoga, and I wanted to make money doing it. Those were like the number 3, the top 3 things that was like, all right, well, how can I do that?
Right. Perfect.
And do it with a little bit of security and stability, because, I could have maybe looked into teaching yoga internationally and, as far as like offering classes or offering workshops or
Right.
retreats, but I wanted more stability. I think at that time in my life, I felt like so many other things were such a whirlwind. I knew I needed the stability of a paycheck specifically. I called her up. I remember she said to me, I've had this conversation with about 32 people and not one has followed through. I said, well,
Oh,
sister,
wow.
I will be the first one to actually follow through. I think these first three questions, if you're considering getting into yachting, three things that she told me that were make or break. Number one, there is a financial investment right off the bat.
Right.
And this kind of leads into, our what standard courses you need to take. So basically, if you want to join a boat, there's a couple courses that you have to take. And if you can imagine, if you're on a boat in the middle of the ocean and there's an emergency, the crew is the first responders.
Right.
We can't like dial 911 and have a fire truck show up at our house and hook up to, a fire hydrant and put the fire out. That is us. So your basic STCW is what it's called. You can Google STCW, and they're offered, I believe, all over the world. And Randy, maybe help me if I'm wrong here, but Fort Lauderdale, there's a couple different places that you can take your STCW. I think Antibes.
Yeah, they've Blue Water and Antibes. Yeah.
Yep. I also know there's one in Palma de Mallorca. There's a school there, Mallorca, Spain. So
Awesome.
There's definitely different options for places that you can take your STCW. Those are kind of just the first three off the top of my head. But if you Google STCW, and recently there was a new
the PSA and the VPDSD, the
yes.
Proficiency in Security Awareness. That's the
yes.
newest one.
Which I believe now is incorporated into most STCW programs.
Yeah.
So that might be something that if you're looking to take your STCW, you want to look into making sure that those are part of your STCW course. Round about $1,000 for that. I think it's give or take $100. It might be a little more, it might be a little less, depending on where you're going, but it is about $1,000 investment for that. In addition to that, you need your ENG1. So ENG1 is a physical. It's just your basic. They check your ears, they check your eyes, they check your pulse, they check your urine for protein, I believe. And they just basically want to make sure that in the case of an emergency, you are physically able to respond. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Why else, would you need a physical to get a job? It's to make sure that you're physically capable of doing the job, which it is a physically demanding job, at least I would say, especially coming from teaching yoga full time, which might be more so emotionally, energetically, physically demanding in certain ways. But as far as physical labor, yachting is definitely takes a toll on the body. So your ENG1.
I've got a list for the ENG1s that's updated. I can put that in the show notes.
Perfect. Beautiful. Now, if you're looking to become a stewardess, and I kind of just sort of went off track into these courses, but I think it's important to maybe get them out there. It's really important to have your, what is the food one?
Food and Hygiene Level 2.
There we go. Food and Hygiene Level 2. You will absolutely need that. I did mine online. I think that was maybe, I can't remember, maybe $50 to $80, maybe $100, something like that. But you'll absolutely need that if you're looking to be on the interior at all. And it probably wouldn't hurt to also have for anybody. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's one where they changed the newest ones. They say that you have to do the one that's in person. They kind of phased out the online ones. Yeah. So
yep.
May as well get it at the same time as your STCW if you're going to be at a school.
Yeah, exactly. And then there are other courses that you can take from there. I don't know. Are there other requirements as far as just like the basic starting out right off the bat for financial investment of courses that people might need to take?
I think, like the biggest one is STCW, the ENG1. And if you're going to be handling food, so like a chef or a stew, that Food and Hygiene Level 2. Yep. I always would recommend people, if you're going to get the PSA, the Proficiency in Security Awareness, to see if your school offers the next level up, which is the VPDSD, because you can just bypass, like, it's pretty much like the PSA with just like a couple extra things added on. Right. And for like a lot of the larger boats and commercial vessels, like people need to have that higher level. Mm-hmm. So rather than pay twice, I try to tell people, like, if you can, ask your school for that other level. And then for chefs, I mean, if you're just starting out, you most likely maybe will be like a crew chef. But if for boats of 10 crew or more, sole chefs, head chefs someone needs to have the ship's cook certificate.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's about it. But
So,
yeah.
yeah. And then you can, of course, go from there. You can take your silver
Yeah.
service. You can take flower courses. But I mean, I wouldn't go nuts off the bat. I think this is something that I've also seen in the yoga and the coaching world. People often think that they're not good enough. Again, it comes back to that abundance coaching. Start with the basics and get yourself on a boat, because there are some boats that will pay for your further education, that will give you paid time off. Maybe there's different programs run differently, but there are options to further your education down the road. So get the base. So that was the first thing that my friend Amanda had told me. There is a financial investment, and then of course you need to put yourself in that place. So, there are options for crew housing in most of these places where there are schools. It's really affordable accommodations. Same with food. So you want to save enough money to pay for your courses and to live. She told me that was kind of like the first thing to check off the list. And if that's a deal breaker for you, then she's like, I won't even bother with the other two. So at the time, I was lucky enough, to have saved up money. Of course, I've also been a bartender most of my life to kind of supplement my other passion for my life. So I was able to save the money to be able to do that. The second thing that she said, if yachting is something that's interesting to you or something that you're debating getting into, she said, you need to move on board pretty much with only one large soft suitcase, right?
Yes.
You have to keep in mind that these boats, though they seem gigantic, they oftentimes have minimal extra storage. But moving your entire life into a suitcase is something that really stresses you out. So maybe just have a look at that and see, like, is this something that I really can do? Is this something that really stresses me out? At the time in my life, as I mentioned, I was going through a divorce. I had another dear friend of mine mention to me reading about minimalism and how minimalism can be a really healing concept while you are grieving. And of course, you have to look at your own circumstances. But for me, it was something that I was very interested in. And of course, I moved out of my apartment with my husband at the time. So I went from a fully furnished 2-bedroom place into 1 bedroom. So I already had kind of started that process, letting go a lot of material goods. I had been living in then with a roommate for a few months. And when I decided to get into yachting, I pretty much sold or donated everything except for what I called my if yachting fails insurance.
I see.
So into a 5x10 storage unit, I put a mattress, 1 box of pots and pans and cups and plates, 1 desk that I could use to work on and eat at, and pretty much 1 or 2 boxes of childhood memorabilia and what I consider my valuables in life, some of my grandmother's jewelry and stuff like that. Things that were really important to me at the time, I put into a 5x10 storage unit, and then I moved on board with 1 suitcase. I had to give away my kitten, so that was the hardest part of the whole thing. But he's happy. He's living in a new home right now, and he's happy, so that's okay. But letting go and shedding material things is amazingly freeing, and it's a process that has taken me 3 years. And since then, I've now let go of that storage unit, and I've gotten rid of all of that yachting insurance because it worked. Yachting worked.
That's great.
Yeah. Moving on board with 1 suitcase, so that's a process. And then the last thing that she told me, she said, I would give yachting, commit at least 1 year of your life. She said there are a lot of different programs. There's a lot of different avenues that you can take. However, if you really want to reap the benefits of long-term yachting, at least from my perspective, to be able to move towards freelance one day, it's really important to show longevity on your CV. Committing a year of your life to 1 boat could be, that could be a deal breaker for some people. So those are the 3 things that she said to me that were really okay. And I took a day or 2 and I really let it settle, and I prayed on it. I meditated on it. I moved it through my body on the yoga mat and running. And for me, it was a no-brainer. I think I just sort of switched gears almost within 2 days of, okay, I'm going to do that. When I look back at that time now, I don't know. I must have been either a little bit crazy, a lot bit lucky, and also, really driven. I had nothing to lose.
Yeah. All or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And what time of year was that? Because I was just thinking, when I first got into yachting, I had zero idea about hiring seasons.
Mm.
I didn't even, I got hired over the internet for my first job, which is super, super rare. I'm very
Yep.
lucky. But my second job, when I was looking, I ended up in Fort Lauderdale in February,
Mm-hmm.
and all the crew agents were telling me, they're like, everyone already has jobs and everyone's gone. And
Exactly.
like the upside of that is like I was the only person in town, so like
Yeah.
any jobs there were, I like people called me. But like the downside was like the selection was not really, it wasn't like I could be like, I want this and this and this. It was like you're gonna get whatever's available.
Absolutely. That is
So
a really good question. And I too kind of got, well, it was sort of like divine timing. So I moved out
yeah.
of my apartment with my ex-husband in February. I spent that summer at home, and it was in July where I sort of had this epiphany, I need to get on a boat. And basically, once I decided, yes, I'm going to do this, I spent the whole month of August selling my stuff, finding a subletter for my apartment, finding a home for my cat,
Yeah,
and setting things up that I needed in order to make this happen. So I had the whole month of August to do that.
it's perfect time to,
It was
yeah, and then
perfect timing.
yeah.
And then I moved into the crew house on September 1st, which is so
Right.
funny for me how yearly,
Yeah.
September and fall seems to be. I mean, of course, in the United States, that's when we start school. It kind of feels like a new year. September 1st, I moved to Fort Lauderdale, and on October 3rd, I was moving on to my first permanent 95-meter super yacht.
That's awesome. That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
It was
That's so
amazing.
great.
Yeah. I got there like a little. I think the Fort Lauderdale boat show is the end of September.
It's the end of October this year.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
So fall, September, October. So I definitely remember feeling like when I was there, I was a little bit ahead of the game. Again, there's that Capricorn type A personality.
Yeah.
If you're not early, you're late.
Yeah.
So yeah, September 1st, I moved down. The first 2 weeks that I was there, I day worked. I did a week-long trip down to the Keys.
Oh,
So I got a
awesome.
lot of learning experience, and I was really able to build my CV during those 2 weeks, which,
Yeah.
wow, reflecting back, it felt like forever. And 2 weeks is really not a lot of time. But
Right. But when you
I
don't
also,
have a job yet, you're like, this is forever. What's happening?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I was building contacts, which was really important. You really need to
Right.
be in the right place at the right time. I hadn't even had the opportunity yet to go to any of the crew agents in Fort Lauderdale because I was so busy right off the bat.
Right.
And I remember saying to myself, I was so nervous. I was so anxious. I hadn't completed my STCW yet. My STCW was scheduled for the third week of September. So I thought, right, I'm just going to get to Florida. I'm going to like feel the situation out. I'll live in the crew house and see how it goes. And being American too was really helpful. I could day work without
Right.
worrying about it. So that was really pivotal experience, learning experience for me. And that little, quick trip down to the Keys, I had my chief stew. I was a temporary second stew. My chief stew, I learned so much from her. She had been in the industry for God knows how many years, and she was really, really good. So I learned so much from her in those 7 or so days, and I attest a lot of what I knew, and to her, actually, that was really great. And then I interviewed actually for my job that I got like 2 days before my STCW.
That's amazing.
So so I just remember at that time, and this is really helpful, I think, just be a yes person.
Right.
Say yes. I mean, with, of course, discretion. If something feels yucky or feels sketchy, or you feel like, again, that's your intuition telling you something's not quite right. However, if there's opportunity for work, say yes. And I remember so many times driving my car to this yacht, the first time driving down to Miami, being like, what the heck am I doing? I don't know anything about anything in regards to yachting. I mean, I grew up in Newport, Narragansett, Rhode Island. My dad was a fisherman, so I grew up around boats, but I knew nothing about, I knew the basics of like tying a knot, but like as far as like making beds, and I had been in restaurants my whole life. Worst case scenario, I really know how to serve them food really well. And as long as their bellies are happy, then everything else can come after that.
Yeah, here's your food. That's always a great.
Yeah.
You're always happy to see that person.
Yes, yes. So be a yes person, even though you may be really, really scared and think like,
Mm,
I don't know anything yet, be a yes person. So
mm,
as long as I had completed my STCW, then I had my first job. And then I spent a week after completing my STCW and sold my car. And then I moved on board October 3rd. So timing wise, to kind of
that's awesome.
circle it all back around, I think the fall is a really good time to be in the States. Now, if it's the spring, I
Mm,
mean, if it's up to me, you want to be in the Med.
right.
You want to be in Antibes. You want to be in Palma. You
Mm,
want to be in Monaco, which
mm,
might be a little bit challenging, but there are options there too. But
mm,
you want to be where the crew agents are, where there's crew housing, and where there's
mm.
big marinas that you can dock walk and you can find jobs. Summertime, at least in the northern hemisphere, the Mediterranean is where it's at, where all the boats
Yeah.
are.
And Barcelona's coming up with their new Port Vel
Yeah.
they've got there. Elite's in there in Barcelona. Shout out to
Yes.
Elite. Yes.
Heck yeah.
That's an awesome
Lovely.
place to be.
That's how you and I know each other, actually.
Yes, how we met. It's so
Yep.
awesome.
Yep.
That's such a small world. And yachting really is a small world. So I always used to tell
Hmm.
people like, it's all about being in the right place at the right time. It's all about who you know. And
Yes.
career agents are good people to know because, they're
Absolutely.
people are calling them up every single day, giving them job orders. So yeah, show your face if you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're in
Yeah.
town. I always tell people, even if you're on a boat and you're not looking to move on, but you haven't shown your face to the career agent yet, like just go in and see them if if you get a chance to get away and just show your face and shake their hand
Yes.
because it just it puts you in their mind so much more, like just making that personal connection. So
Absolutely. And it's been such a helpful resource for me over the years. I mean, even
mm,
times I actually don't know, looking back, if I've ever accepted a job through one of the options that a career agent has given
yeah,
me. But it's what the beautiful thing about it is that happened because I had so many options,
yeah,
So, and I mean, invaluable advice,
mm,
help with my CV.
yeah,
I mean, even just conversations with people like you and conversations with people that have been in the industry that are now crew agents that have been morale boosting, super
yeah,
supportive, and I've established friendships with so many. So it's
yeah.
really, really helpful. Absolutely. And yeah, actually my boat this last season spent a month in the shipyard in Barcelona. So it's
Oh,
definitely,
sweet.
yeah, and it's an amazing city too. So definitely if it's maybe February, March, April, May,
Yeah,
coming into springtime, get yourself to Barcelona. It's a great city. Lots of
yeah.
options there too.
Stunning. I love what you say
Hmm.
too about being a yes person and just figuring it out. Like, okay, first of
Yeah.
all, Google is so underrated. Like, I'm not saying
Hmm.
lie by any means about what you can accomplish or what you can do. If you've got yourself an opportunity and you're told to do something, do it obviously how your chief stew tells you to do. But if you can take as much initiative as possible, it will be super impressive. Like, I remember my first job, my chief stew had this hectic long list of stuff that we had to accomplish. And it was very motivating because I was like, I want to cross everything off the list. There was the most random things on there, like repotting plants. I was like, I've never done that before. I was like, I'm just gonna figure it out, and like the
Exactly.
second student was like, you repotted that plant. I was like, yep, I just
Yep.
did it. Like I
Yes.
I didn't wait for anyone to tell me. Like I just saw it was on the list and I did it. And it wasn't like, that was something where they're like, this is how you have to do it. I understood the base, protect the yacht, use drop cloths, those basic things.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Exactly.
man, if
That
you
is
can,
really, really helpful.
yeah, figure what you can out on your own and then ask questions to supplement that. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. And even if you're looking to get into yachting now, it's kind of that sort of go-getter mentality, right? So if you're
Mm.
listening to this podcast, hopefully you're getting some like juicy tips along the way, but take
Yeah.
that initiative, like
Yeah.
the information is out there for you to take. And
Yeah.
as a chief stewardess, like there was nothing better than when someone came to me and said, hey, I've done A, B, and C. Maybe I need a little bit of help with D, but everything else is
Mm.
taken care of. It's like, oh, such a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't be afraid to use your brain. Like, a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff is kind of common sense, and we second guess ourselves all the time because we're afraid of getting it wrong. But
Right.
that's how you learn. That's how you
Yeah.
learn.
Definitely. I mean, there's no like there's definitely right and wrong ways to do things, but you have to learn and you have to like figure it out along the way. And I think that people definitely, when they see people taking initiative, they appreciate that a lot. Stand by for the continuation of my chat with Chelsea in our next episode. All of the information from today's episode are on our blog. If you go to nauticnomad.com, up in the right hand side, you'll see the link for our blog, or you can go nauticnomad.com/blog, and it will be under season 1, episode 2. Follow us on Instagram. If you want to follow me, my username is @randy@c. That's Randy with an I. Also @nauticnomad. To keep up to date when we launch our podcast, we will announce them there. Also, if you're interested in any of the competitions or events that we have going on, or yachting events, we post about that on our Facebook a lot, which you can also find us @nauticnomad. Huge shout out to Sushi Yummy. They are an incredible place here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that does delivery sushi. They do catering, all that kind of stuff. They have the most amazing acai bowls, fresh sushi made daily. They even make the wasabi daily there fresh. So it's really awesome. Definitely check them out. You can order online at sushi-yummy.online. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave me a voice note if you have the Anchor FM app at our profile Nautic Nomad, or you can leave me a voice message at 530-487-4447. Stay safe out there.